Of course, we've had relationships with thousands and thousands of people, and we've been many thousands of people. We've been everything in history. And when the soul awakens in us, it opens up this breath of compassion and a breath of understanding. It is truly the birth of oneness within the human species. The future human is not a sci-fi imagination. We just have to look at our history with understanding. We've been building this organism, and there is a summation point coming. In order to survive our creative potential, which is emerging at this time in history, we need to grow up. And to grow up, it means sort of claiming our entire being. And we can see signs of the soul beginning to emerge all over the place once you know what you're looking for, once you're looking to see it.
Well, welcome back, everybody, to the Love Conquers Fear podcast. I want to tell you about an experience I just had for the first time in my life. I'm always trying to, push myself and do new things. And I met a woman last year that I knew from the TED conference. She actually had attended one of the dinners that I hosted there. I host an annual dinner there. And her name is Elisa Cohen. And we were at the Renaissance weekend for the first time in my life. It was in Santa Barbara, but they do these all over the U.S. If you ever get an invitation to Renaissance weekend, I highly recommend it. It's kind of like an unconference. There's so many amazing people that attend, and I learned so much about space and leadership and so many other great topics and just so many experts there. And that's where I met Sachin Raja, who you all know was on the podcast, and real spiritual leader, a real shaman in many ways. And that was such a great episode. But anyways, Elisa and I reconnected there, and she said, I really think you would like this meditation retreat that I go to at the beginning of every year. And, I felt my energy like immediately light up. Like I knew it was a yes. With very little detail. She told me a little bit about it. And I just got back from attending that, and it was held at 1440 Multiversity, which is in Scotts Valley, California, about 45 minutes from San Jose. And it's led by John and Will Kabat-Zinn. And John is in his 80s now. It's just full of life, though. You'd never know his age. He actually agreed at the meditation retreat to be on Love Conquers Fear, so I'm really going to enjoy recording that with him in the future. And I walked in and I saw Joe Greenstein, and it was just a beautiful synchronicity because Joe and I went to Warden together. He actually helped me get some of my initial businesses off the ground. And then he went on to be a great entrepreneur and ultimately started a company called Flixster, which acquired Rotten Tomatoes and really became known mostly for Rotten Tomatoes, which really is my go-to for movie reviews at this point. I always compare both the critic and the audience reviews and see how those sync, really read the details. And of course, I care a lot about reviews given my background at Bizarre Voice, as an entrepreneur myself. And Joe and I hadn't seen each other for so long and, gave each other big hugs. And it was just so great to reconnect with him. And this is a retreat that he goes to annually. And he said, it's going to be really weird now that we're here because this is mostly silent. And in prior years, what I found out is that it had been mostly silent, but this year, what John and his son Will decided to do is make it all silent. And so it was around 4 days, and it was a completely silent retreat, including, when you're going to dinner with people, you're sitting in silence. And it sounds, blissful to you listening to this, and I can understand that. But I'll tell you, it's actually really challenging. And, John at the end of it, as we were checking out, he's like, you're going to tell people about this. He was addressing us all. There were about 75 people there. And you're going to say, we meditated, sitting. Then we meditated walking. Then we had a meal, and then we meditated some more. And people are going to think that sounds actually absolutely amazing. But the reality is that's actually really challenging. It's really challenging to both be in silence, quiet the mind, um, allow, consciousness to stream through, not be captured and trapped in your mind by thoughts that you just go on auto repeat. And I found it very challenging, but also at the same time very liberating. Because one of the things that it does, if you ever want to try this, and I've already talked with many friends who are like, oh my gosh, I would love to do a silent meditation retreat, is that it really tunes you into the essence of consciousness and the essence of your senses. Like your hearing goes way up, your sight goes way up, just your ability to feel and witness the beauty and the love that surrounds us all the time. And it's always available to us. And, there are several quips that John uses, which I want to repeat here. He calls this a radical act of sanity, to take your seat and go into this state to really quiet the mind. He also calls it your response ability. And there was one piece which I'm thinking about writing about, where he was saying sometimes during the meditation, it's just this eternal moment, and it's just us. And in my mind, I went to justice. And the reason I went to justice is that, we're always in this constant programmatic situation in the world of form. The media wants us to think a certain way and keep us locked in that state of fear. Social media is pushing, to our basest fears to try to just keep us clicking like mice in a maze looking for the cheese. And at any point in time, we can take our seat. So what did I take away from this experience? When my mind is in a noisy place, I can always act with response ability, and I can always have that radical act of sanity and take my seat. And I've been meditating since on a regular basis, and it's really amazing. So I would encourage you to take up a practice like that. My 2026 theme is all about embodiment. My 2025 theme for the new year was all about the inner journey. And so this is a example of me living that. And I've got a 2-week meditation retreat coming up in Bali at the end of April and beginning of May that I'm really excited about later this year, with Neeraj Mehta, Jack Herrick, and a number of others that have really encouraged me. And you'll see eventually, I think we're recording in a month or so, Neeraj Mehta on the podcast. And it's a form of meditation called Siddha Maha, which I attended virtually at the end of last year, to basically, I was invited to it, and I thought, gosh, I've got so many excuses not to do this online. I'm in the final deadline for my book, Love Conquers Fear, Humanity, AI, and the Age of Abundance for All. And I just thought, I'm going to do it. Again, my energy lit up, and it actually made writing the end of the book, which I wrote the introduction and chapter 13 that week. Chapter 13 is all about how to transform and how humanity will transform as we enter the age of abundance for all. And I'll tell you that, practicing meditation, practicing Siddha Maha meditation that week really helped me a lot in closing it out. So anyways, encouragement on that front. I am really, really honored today to have a guest on that. This was a dream for me, a real stretch, frankly. I had no idea how he would respond, but as synchronicities go, and you all know that I'm a big fan of the book, The Celestine Prophecy. I've been involved with this group that this guy Tom Morgan leads, who will soon be over at our house tonight for dinner. And it's a group called The Leading Edge, and it's about 150 members, really amazing people. I've gotten a lot of value out of the group, but it was the group that actually brought my guest to the forefront, and they did, Q&A and interview with him, and I used that as an opportunity to reach out and see if he'd like to be on Love Conquers Fear, and he said yes, and it is just a huge honor, and we've been having a lot of fun over the last 2 days. I welcome Chris Bache.
Hey.
Yeah, Chris. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. An honor. What an honor.
Well, real pleasure to be here with you.
Well, it really is just a huge honor, and this feels like it was destined to happen when I started Love Conquers Fear. Your book, LSD in the Mind of the Universe, Diamonds from Heaven, that book I've read twice now, and for me, it is the most cosmic book about how to decode the reality that we're in that I've ever read out of 55 books that I read last year. And it's just a must read for people, and people that are not into psychedelics. I would understand that maybe that would be a turnoff for them in hearing the title.
Sure.
But I know from psychedelics in my own experience that really is a connection with the divine. And that it really has helped me figure out what our actual reality is, and the fact that we come from a place of light and love.
Yeah.
And so the way you decode that in the book is just amazing. But maybe we can go back to the beginning on what were the journeys that motivated you eventually to write the book 40 years after your first journey.
Yeah. I'm not a psychologist, and I'm certainly not a business person or an entrepreneur. I've been a professor of religious studies at a small university in Northeast Ohio. And I finished graduate school as a pretty deeply convinced agnostic, atheistically inclined agnostic. And I met the work of Ian Stevenson when I first started my career, and this was back in '78.
Mm-hmm.
And the master introducing empirical evidence for reincarnation, who turned my thinking upside down. Then, more importantly, I met Stanislav Grof's work.
Mm-hmm.
And he had just published Realms of the Human Unconscious, and I took that in, and I immediately felt a calling to do this work. And
he's a real pioneer in LSD research.
Yeah, he's one of the world's foremost authorities on integrating psychedelics into therapeutic work.
Yeah.
And so in 1979, I started working on a self-experiment privately, underground, because it was illegal by that time.
Mm-hmm.
And after 3 medium dose sessions, and these are highly structured therapeutic sessions using Stan Grof's paradigm, his protocol, total isolation, eye shades, lying down, headphones, music, carefully calibrated, sitter, I did 73 high-dose LSD sessions.
Mm-hmm.
This is a protocol I don't recommend,
Mm-hmm.
But I had a passion to want to understand as deeply as I could the fundamental structure of reality, of spiritual reality. And I started in the beginning, like many of us got involved in psychedelics back then, to sort of accelerate my spiritual evolution, to sort of burn up my karma, chew through my karma faster, and awaken sooner. But the method I used was so powerful, it took me beyond the parameters of spiritual awakening into what I came to recognize as cosmological exploration. So I did this work. I did 73 sessions over 20 years. I did 4 years of work. I stopped for 6 years. Then I did 10 years of work. On average, for the years I was working, I was doing 5 sessions a year. So that's, some people would think that's a lot. Some people would think that's not a lot. And then I stopped in 79 and 99. So I worked between when I was 30 to 50 years old, while I was doing my work at the university. So I had a kind of a dual life. I was an academic in the department, doing the things academics do, and publishing and doing committees and teaching. And in my private life, I was doing this very intense psychotherapeutic exploration using LSD. And then after I finished, was writing several books along the way, but the one that you mentioned, LSD and the Mind of the Universe, I published 20 years after I stopped the sessions, because it takes a long time to assimilate and to absorb and to understand and what was going on in these very deep excursions into the universe. And then published LSD and the Mind of the Universe, was just basically just telling a straightforward story as clearly as I can, as concisely as I can, what happened on this journey, where it went. And it went in all sorts of directions that surprised me, things I didn't think were possible. So it's basically an account of a philosopher who has strong kind of existential questions, exploring with this new psychotechnology and see where it went.
And just so the audience knows, a high dose, I think it's 600 micrograms, right?
Yeah. I worked 500 to 600 micrograms. Right. And again, this is not a protocol that I would recommend. And now that I've been through it, now that I understand much more than I knew at the beginning, I would, if I were doing it over again, I would do it differently.
Yep.
I would balance high dose with low dose. I would work with sometimes high doses with maybe LSD, but I would work with psilocybin or ayahuasca in an alternating. I'd be much more nuanced in my approach, but at the time, this is what I was doing.
And just to put that in context, because I'm very pro psychedelics, but I've never done that dosage of any psychedelic. It's good. The journeys I've had last around 3.5 to 4 hours.
Yeah.
And I think 500 to 600 micrograms, I think that's around 8.5, 9 hour journey.
Yeah.
Right.
It's 5 hours most intense, but with the tail, when they come down, about 8 hours.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's an all day enterprise.
Yeah. And just like any time people do psychedelics, great intentionality, really good care that you had with your wife at the time.
Yeah, had a sitter.
Right.
And she was a clinical psychologist.
Yeah.
And my wife was always a sitter. Once you move into this work, you recognize that this is so intense. So these states are so intense, and they're so demanding on your body and your emotions and your consciousness that you really have to prepare for it very conscientiously. I mean, I would do spiritual practices before the session. I'd do a different kind of spiritual practice after the session to support integration. The cost and the challenge of entering this deeply into these states of consciousness requires just a lot of care and a lot of forethought going into it. And so a lot of preparation. Yeah. And I really, when I'm talking to my students or whatnot about this, always recommending that if you're going to work in this protocol where you're entering into temporary states of immersion, this was a temporary condition, different than classical spiritual practice. If you're going to work in these very short, intense, temporary states, it's really important to have a daily spiritual practice to anchor you, to help you absorb what you're letting loose, to give you a training in discriminating awareness that you can take into these states that help you stabilize, because these are very convulsive, kind of existentially convulsive states, and meditation training is really helpful in entering those states productively.
Yeah. It's not a protocol that any of the retreat centers I've been to would ever take someone through, because they'd probably end up never coming back, right? Because it would be so intense,
Yeah.
The only person that I personally know that has ever done something of that intensity is John Mackey, who you were watching his episode today. It was episode 30, and he he wrote a tell-all memoir on the journey of Whole Foods with the whole story.
Yeah.
And it starts out in chapter 1 where he talks about this macro dose of LSD that
Yeah.
he faced complete ego death,
Yeah.
saw the unity of all things, the dissolution, he became just part of source. Yeah. And the outcome of that after he dropped out of UT Austin was to start Whole Foods.
Yeah.
It got him over the fear of
That's a great session.
basically being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Like a great session, not just for him, but for the world. I mean, Whole Foods has done more to advance, very intentional diets, really taking good care of the animals, the plants that they sell you, everything else. I mean, it's really changed the world. I always tell people as a vegetarian that Whole Foods has done more to advance the vegetarian diet probably than any other company in the entire world.
Yeah.
Because they gave so many brands a chance, like Beyond Meat and so many brands that really, that was their entry point.
Yeah.
For the market.
And that extra boost of awareness, that constant, I think of psychedelics, and our understanding of psychedelics is that they are amplifiers of consciousness. They don't give you a specific experience, they just amplify the consciousness that you have. But if you use that temporary state of amplified consciousness well, it can lead to all sorts of breakthroughs and insights and healing of trauma. Or it just opens you up and you see things and understand things better. And it can give you that, like John, that breakthrough to that momentum to do something really extraordinary.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been transformational for my life. I've always felt like I've understood my meaning, and I've had, experiences with, I'm going to use the word God because that's what I call it, but for people listening to this, they could think of it as consciousness or the universe or, the astral plane, however they want to, heaven, however they want to refer to that. So I remember the moments in my life where I had that really deep experience, pre ever taking psychedelics with, exactly where I was at, the spiritual awakening, the feeling in my body, just this beautiful knowing of that we're surrounded by so much love, that's where we come from.
Yeah.
But actually experiencing that in my journeys and seeing that, my meaning has been to really help humanity through technology create a better world.
Yeah.
Being Jewish, that's called tikkun olam.
Yeah.
Here we are at the ultimate manifestation of that. And, as love conquers fear, a journey that really led to what I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
And led to the book that I just concluded writing, which now I'm in the tedious editing process. I'm sure you know how that goes.
That's like,
but I do want to, and I've said this multiple times on the podcast with lots of guests have given this advice, like, real care, set and setting really matters, like really understanding like where you're at, whether or not it's the right place for you. You really check the references on wherever you're going, and all of that stuff matters a lot because you're using very, very powerful spiritual tools. And I personally, I'm not saying I look down on people that do this, but because I don't, like, everybody makes their own choice, but I don't use them at all in party type settings.
Yeah.
It's just purely.
I have never tripped. I don't trip. I don't, and I always specify these are sessions. And it really draws from the Japanese term of sesshin, which is a period of intense spiritual practice, meditation practice.
Yeah.
So for me, a day spent in the psychedelic state is a sesshin. It's a very intense time of spiritual practice.
Yeah.
Or philosophical inquiry. And it's one of the things that I think I've learned only as I've been sharing my experiences with people. I've come to appreciate that one of the things that seemed to have impacted the trajectory of my work was the standardization of set and setting, in that I was using the same substance, the same dose, the same set and setting, same protocol, same sitter, even the same area of the country, because if you change any of those, you change some of the context.
Right.
And it changes the meeting point between you and infinite consciousness. So it's like if we want to study the stars, first we find a mountain way outside of town where there's very few lights, and we get up on the mountain and we create this great big ears of an antenna, and we put it up in the sky and we hold it there for a long period of time and don't move it, so that the subtle signals begin to register. And I think it's like that with psychedelics. If you want to hold it there for a long period of time, and if you do that and you register and absorb what comes in and you digest it thoroughly, then when you go back the next time and the next time, the conversation or the communion deepens. You're not simply going back to the same state. Something is set in motion in terms of your transformation inside as you absorb the teachings and try to take them in, that it changes you. And so the changed you enters into a different kind of communion, a deeper state of communion in subsequent sessions. At least that's been my experience.
Well, one of the, there's so many things that were just incredibly mind-blowing for me. I don't know any other word to use for it in your book, and beautiful. And one of them is, by the end of your sessions, as they were kind of wrapping up, your word for God in the book is my beloved, although sometimes you use the word God too. God was basically, you found at the end, was taking you through in these 73 sessions in a logical sequence to decode our reality, and frankly to clear some of the collective wounds in the human psyche that we had accumulated over our evolution here on Earth. And
that was a surprise to me. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
Because when I started, I thought I had adopted a personal model of transformation. So I thought it was about personal karma, personal, issues. And I was expecting to sort of work on my personal issues or former life issues and clear it up and awaken faster. And what I found is that after 2 years, when I'd gone through some pretty deep death and rebirth experiences, the landscape opened, and I was drawn into vast landscapes of collective suffering and collective trauma, covering hundreds of thousands of persons and thousands of years. And I just didn't have a frame of reference for understanding what was happening. And that eventually I came to understand that somehow something was using my sessions to facilitate a transformation, a healing, a purification of collective trauma that's stored in the collective psyche. And so that somehow what was started by an individual became kind of like a funnel, draining these poisons out of the collective psyche in order to make the mind of the species, the species mind, clearer, less traumatized, and more open to the positive energies that are, I think, coming into us very powerfully at this time in history.
Yeah, totally agree. I think this is the most fateful time for humanity, the time that we're in right now. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. One of them that there were so many parts of the book that moved me a lot. And last night you and I were at dinner with my niece Chantel and my sister Brandy, which was really, really fun.
It was.
We went to the Well, which is a great place in Austin. Highly recommend. I don't have any ads on the podcast, but I do talk about the things I love. Nobody pays me to do any of that. I'm self-funding all this. One that moved me a lot and has a synchronicity with my book, with Love Conquers Fear, is I have a chapter on the objectification of women and how there's been millennia of suffering, and that's a poisonous kind of toxin that humanity needs to transcend.
Yeah.
And you experienced in your journeys actually becoming a woman and seeing and experiencing and helping clear the trauma. And that was extremely, extremely moving. Maybe you can just talk about that a bit.
I was going through what Stan called the perinatal level of consciousness, this very existential, very intense period between personal consciousness and transpersonal consciousness, and going through the typical kind of intense purification processes, which culminated in ego death. But the form that ego death took for me is that it took my existence. I'm a white male philosopher concerned with the meaning of life. It took that and it completely turned me into the opposite. It turned me into a female, many females, people of color, women who were not interested in philosophy or the meaning of life at all. It just turned me into the opposite and gave me no other outlet. It just forced me to experience life from that perspective, which was terrifying. It was like the perfect hell for a philosopher, a male philosopher. And I fought it. And then eventually I stopped fighting it and I gave into it. And I went through this death and then a rebirth. And then I was taken into the world of women under the arm of the Great Mother, I say, and was taken into hundreds and hundreds of lives of women in all sorts of different aspects of life. I mean, I experienced being pregnant and laughing at our husbands and with my sisters. And it was a tremendous inversion. It showed me many things about how narrowly I had experienced life from the perspective of a male ego. And it opened me to the tremendous diversity.
Yeah.
And that was my sort of letting go of my identity as who I had been up to that point in time. Because when you move into these very deep states of consciousness that are large and huge and expansive in time and expansive in other ways, your identity keeps you small. It keeps you constricted. And you have to let go of that identity if you're going to have experiences that go beyond that identity. So that just what's happened to how the universe just took me and snapped me like a twig.
Yeah.
And then sent me on. And there were other deaths later.
Yeah.
But that was the first one that really snapped my ego.
Why do you think that happened? Like, looking back, through all the journeys, like, because it's so, I mean, people listening to this,
Yeah.
it's so transcendent, like actually like experiencing completely what it feels like to be a woman, to be the opposite of what you are, and then to experience the collective suffering that women have actually gone through. And I mean, you've always struck me as someone who's deeply humble. You can feel your humility as you read your book. I highly recommend your book on Audible, because I love the fact that you read it.
I read it, yeah.
And just the deep awe and humility, and sometimes, I don't know if you were crying during some parts of it, reading it, but it felt like it, to me. Yeah, some parts made me cry.
Basically, my experience has been that I always felt in participating in, and with hindsight, there was always an intelligence guiding my sessions. It was very much like this class has started again. It picks up where it stopped. There's always an intelligence guiding my sessions. The intelligence never took a particular form, never took a deity form or a spiritual, form. It was always invisible, but it was always tangibly present. And as I went, it took me into a deeper level of reality, and the nature of the consciousness that I experienced of that reality was different than I had experienced prior. But then, as I continued to work that level of reality, it would take me into a still deeper level of reality and in a completely different universe. So it was always, if it had adopted any form, that form would have been tied to a particular level of reality. But by adopting no form, it was always opening me to the possibility that there was something going beyond where this was. And it, so I just, there's an experience of exquisite intimacy with it. And it took me a long time to understand the structure of the lessons that it was giving me, because it would give me a set of experiences, and then it would take me back through them multiple times in one session and over sessions to make sure I understood. And until eventually it was sure that I understood, and then it would take me into something new. But why it was doing it the way it did it, that was one of the challenges in writing the book, was trying to digest the entire journey and to try to fathom what were the turning points, what were the stages, what was happening, how did this compare to what was going on there. And I found that there was an exquisite texture to the lesson, to the curriculum.
Yeah.
But it's not one that's necessarily immediately obvious. I would go into things that were completely inscrutable. I just couldn't comprehend them. Sometimes the layers of pain would be incomprehensible, or even the layers of wonder, and it takes time to even understand what was manifesting in those moments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's really moving about the book, and I feel like I need to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I mean, I know many human beings have thanked you for being so curious and so driven to understand our reality, and go through the level of suffering that you went through in these sessions to actually get to that level of helping clear some of the collective wounds in the human psyche, and get the insights, that you got. One of the things that I talked with you about after I picked you up at the airport is I said, I hope, that you understand that I meant no harm in this, but I've said, many times on the podcast, I've referenced your book a lot, including in the interview with John.
Yeah.
John and I were on a plane together going to Necker Island last year to meet with Richard Branson and these amazing conscious capitalists, and just had an amazing time together. And he had picked up your book. And I said, well, what do you think so far? And he said, well, I'm trying more and more to get into it. And I said, John, I just recommend you jump to chapter 9. Jump to chapter 9, and then, go into the birth of the future human and what's on the other side of that, the diamond soul, diamond vision. We'll get into that in this interview, and then work your way, back. But how would you summarize I know this is a tall order, but how would you summarize the collective healing parts of the journey? The ego death that you had to go through to get to the other side, to help clear some of humanity's greatest wounds. I mean, I know it was unexpected.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine that you would even, going into this, say, like, hey, I have a desire to do that. Now, your soul, I'm sure, did.
Yeah.
Because
what I did come to learn later down the way is that my soul was incarnated to do this work.
Yes.
And the collective healing was an aspect of that. And I seem to have been given a constitution that allowed me to do the work. I was built strong for this type of work. I can go into expansive states comfortably, and I also congeal comfortably. I didn't understand any of this when it opened, but fortunately it took me into that ocean, what I call the ocean of suffering, slowly. It took me into it stage by stage. It intensified. And it was intense because I opened up into this work for 1 year, and then I stopped the work, and it was for 6 years. And then when I started the work again, the ocean of suffering, this collective purification work, began exactly where it had stopped and continued on. And so let me back up just a bit. In my experience of working with this, there's a purification phase of the session, and there's an ecstatic phase. So you first go through the purification, the death part, and then you go, if you navigate that well, it reaches a crescendo. There's a kind of an ultimate sacrifice made, and then you're spun out for the remainder of the session into an ecstatic phase. So it's not like there's just all suffering and all suffering. I would never have been able to endure it. But there is a second part of the session. So when I was going in through the ocean of suffering in the first part of the hour of each session, there was an ecstatic phase that was following on the second part, and there was a continuity of development through the ecstatic phase. So in the first year of the ocean of suffering, when I went through it, I was being taken beyond linear time into what I came to call deep time. I began to have these 7 sessions where I experienced my entire life from beginning to end as simultaneously present now. I experienced my old age now. That was a dramatic and clarifying experience, because I began to have an understanding of what my life was about, what it served, what I was here for. And then when I stopped for 6 years, when I started again, the ocean of suffering began. But then a whole new chapter began, what I called initiation into the universe. It was like I was being given a crash course in cosmology 101. I was taken through a series of experiences that began to show me, it took me back to the beginning of creation, to the Big Bang, and it began to show me some of the dynamics operating in the emergence of our universe. Which from a philosophical perspective was a tremendously valuable set of insights. So I just wanted to make sure that the listener understands it wasn't just all suffering. It was a cycle. And what you learn is the cycle. You learn that if you can go into great pain and great suffering without understanding why, I didn't understand why, but if you let it take you wherever wants to take you, and surrender to it completely, it will take you through a vortex, and then you will come into great ecstasy and great teaching and receive blessings. So what you internalize is the whole cycle. It gets bad, okay, and then it gets better. And so it's a rhythmic cycle, and that's what gives you the strength to go back into the suffering again. I took 2 years to begin the ocean of suffering and to get through the ego death part, and then the ocean of suffering lasted 2 years total of active work. And then there was this crescendo, and sort of an orgy of collective anguish. And then I was catapulted out into the next stage of the journey, what took me into the beginning of archetypal reality. And the ocean of suffering never returned, which left me with a puzzle. Why? Because clearly there's great suffering remaining in the collective psyche.
You couldn't have cleared it all.
I couldn't have cleared it all. And I want to say that I don't think there's anything spiritually special about taking this work on. To me, it's like this is what any mother, any father would do if they had an opportunity. If they saw a child suffering, we would just simply step up and try to do what we could do to stop that suffering. And that's kind of what it felt like. It felt like just a normal response to witnessing suffering in the world. And if you're given an understanding that you can change that, then you just do it. It's just a natural instinct.
Well, the way I would describe that is when you're in your alignment with your soul's mission in this lifetime, you have an unparalleled amount of energy, and you feel the call of duty. You feel that this is a must do.
And then when that culminated, I eventually decided, I thought it could be why it stopped. Maybe it was because any one individual is only allowed to do so much. But I think the larger reason is you can become useful to the system more useful by bringing blessings into the system from above than draining the poisons out from the bottom. I'm not sure whether that's the ultimate reason for it, but that's what the best I could come up with, because the ocean of suffering stopped. And somehow the energy that was released in that process, it was as if it's like being underneath storm clouds, and so the light isn't getting through. And this work seemed to have cleaned out some of the clouds, and then there was more light coming in, and that more light became the foundation for everything that followed next. It changed the operational landscape altogether.
Yeah.
And then I went into the next series of work. The other thing I would mention is that I think there are many, many people in the world doing this type of work, not necessarily with psychedelics and whatnot, but I think there are many, many hidden bodhisattvas in the world who are working to lift the suffering, not just their personal suffering or their personal karmic lineage suffering, but really working to lift the suffering out of the collective psyche. So I don't think this is in any way, certainly nothing unique to me and nothing privileged. This is a widespread effort now across the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that too. I mean, I see so many people putting big oars in the water to know the stakes, know that this is the time where we really got to make sure humanity makes it. I mean, that's something that I saw very clearly in a journey. One of the things that I've been blessed with, and we all have our gifts, is the ability to see where technology is going to go.
Yeah.
And, growing up as a kid in Austin was a very small town when I was born. It was about the size of Anchorage, Alaska today. Yeah. It's crazy that now this is the 13th largest city in the U.S. and it's just booming. But, it's picked on a lot for being different, because back then, I started programming obsessively at age 7, thanks to my mom. And back then that wasn't normal, and anytime you do something that's really away from the crowd, people are worried for you, It's like that movie, The Croods, this cartoon movie where, his daughter wants to go outside the cave and like really go explore and see if she can meet other, early versions of Homo sapiens. And he's like, no, don't do it. You're going to die. Something's going to eat you or whatever else.
Yeah.
And eventually she does it and humanity advances.
Yeah.
And so, we're in a time where the opportunity to create abundance for everyone on the planet, heal the planet, heal the animals on the planet, really alleviate a tremendous amount of suffering, has never been more present than it is now.
Yeah, it's within our reach.
Yeah, and I see a lot of people like putting big oars in the water. I mean, in my space in tech, Mira Murati and, Reid Hoffman and, Dimas Hassibis is doing that, and Mustafa Suleiman, and, these names that people listening to this will know that really are heading, some of the most important AI initiatives and doing it with great intentionality, knowing that that getting to the other side of this means the end of disease, a world of nearly unlimited energy, and, really the alleviation of a lot of the division of humanity, which, that episode with John Mackey, he talked about is, a root of our suffering, and this dogmatic separation is just an illusion as it is. But realizing that we're 99.9% genetically identical all over the world. Yeah. And that we have this opportunity. And I think it's the next 10 to 15 years that really determine whether or not we make it. And technology forces us to make choices. It makes other means of being obsolete. I'll give you an example. Like we're an investor in a company called Upside Foods, and it makes meat from the cells of an animal. It's very Star Trek, kind of like you remember the Star Trek replicator.
Yeah.
And it's superior to regular meat. There's no use of antibiotics. There's no hormones in it. It's so clean that if you put it in the refrigerator, it would last for weeks and weeks because there's no contaminants.
Yeah.
But it's just meat.
Yeah.
It's cellularly the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And the difficult thing about a company like that is getting to scale.
Yeah.
And in Texas, it's been outlawed, unfortunately, my home state. It's been outlawed in Florida. Guess who's doing the outlawing?
Yeah.
It's dominated, the Texas House, the Florida House, like quite a few of them are cattle ranchers.
Yeah.
They see this as a threat.
Yeah.
But it's inevitable that it's going to get there because the way capitalism works and technology works is that eventually you break you get on a new technological curve where the cost and superiority of the product are undeniably better.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to happen with this because you're using almost no land. It uses about 1/10 of the water and 1/10 of the feed cost. But it's a live tissue.
You could draw parallels with psychedelics. I mean, they were made illegal, but they're proving themselves to be so effective in healing and so effective in deepening our insights into ourselves and into life itself that they're being reclaimed. There are over 300 universities and medical schools across the world that are studying the therapeutic applications of psychedelics. So they are coming back. They're just too valuable, but they were made illegal because they frightened us. They scared us. They turned up things we didn't understand them.
Yeah.
But the indigenous people have had them for thousands of years. So now we are learning from our indigenous brothers and sisters a lot of how to use them wisely, because we didn't necessarily use them very wisely when they first hit our shores.
Right.
Right. Now I think we're ready for a second, more grounded engagement with them.
Yeah. And we even, I've said multiple times on the podcast that there's so much ancient wisdom for us to learn from.
Yeah.
That there was actually a concerted effort to kind of demonize, some of those people as like, as you say, the indigenous peoples, like savages, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And they knew how to use their bodies and minds more than most of us know how to use them today, and continue that tradition. So there's so much that we can learn from each other.
Yeah.
In the book, I've mentioned, chapters 9 through 11, and everybody's going to have their favorite section. And I would actually love to ask you what your favorite is, but I would love to cover that section if you don't mind.
Sure.
Because it's so transcendent. And by the way, when I mentioned to John, hey, jump into that, about an hour later, I was like, what do you think? And he's like, okay, now I'm really into it. So it did work with at least John Mackey. Chapter 9 is all about the birth of the future human.
Yeah. And
how we're in this evolutionary shift. And you describe humanity as a kind of superorganism, which on episode 11 of the podcast, Byron Reese, one of my best friends, great author, talked about humanity as a superorganism in his book, We Are Agora.
Yeah.
And it's a very Avatar way of thinking, but I really believe it, that we're all connected. We're all part of one consciousness. And consciousness being fundamental. And if you could just kind of start with breaking that section down, and I would love to fill in like the parts that jumped out to me the most, because there's so much richness in there, and there's also some real anguish, like what you saw we have to go through to get to the other side, which I'm hoping with initiatives like mine with others, that we don't have to go through so much pain to form the future human. And as you call God is ultimately like the diamond maker,
Yeah.
taking us through this evolutionary shift, and that we're built for evolutionary speed.
We are. We are. Let me back up just a bit. So we'll get on the birth of the future human.
Great.
That began to come in more than 10 years into the journey. So there's a lot of steps going up to that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of learning, a lot of, because working in these states, you learn by becoming. So you must become something in order to really experience it deeply and understand it. And so you experience the collective psyche of the human species, not from an outside perspective, but you learn it by losing yourself and dissolving into it, and yet having an awareness and then being taught how it works, how the collective psyche works, how the species mind works. There's a period of dying into this collective mind, and then there's a period of dying out of the collective mind, where the death that's involved in going the next stage is not an ego death, but you literally die to the fundamental cognitive structures of humanity itself. At one point, the entire history of humanity fell away from me. And when the history fell away, all the philosophies, all the religions of the world, all the understandings, all the science of the world fell away. And I moved into archetypal reality. And then after experiencing that reality for a while, there was another transition, and I experienced entering in what some would call causal reality, non-dual reality. And all along this process, there are things that began to be dropped into my experience. They were just pieces that were dropped in. And when I wrote the book, I collected these visionary experiences together in one chapter. And basically, I'm going to not do them justice in a short summary, but I basically began to have profoundly deep insights that told me that humanity was coming into a critical time in its evolutionary story. We're entering into a time of profound grace, a pivot point that would mark a before and after of human evolution, of human story. A time of great spiritual fruition, a time of great peace, a time of ecstatic joy. So these kept on dropping in, and there were other pieces of seeing that there is an intelligence in the universe that is manifesting itself in these changes. This wasn't something that we were doing by ourselves, for ourselves, but there was nature was doing this through us. Nature was taking us into this turning point, which was of a magnitude comparable to earlier in our evolutionary history, when we inherited the 50% increase in our brain size. We didn't give ourselves that. Nature gave us that.
Right.
Something happening like that. And it really was striking. And first, I didn't have even at the beginning, I didn't even have an understanding that seeing these things was even possible. But nowhere did my sessions give me, or the consciousness in my sessions give me any insight into how it was going to accomplish this. I didn't understand how it would be possible. Given what I looked around in the world, I didn't see us making this quantum jump in consciousness. But then, late in my work, in session 55, which kind of late in the story, because I had already entered into, we'll talk later about the diamond luminosity work. I had 2 of those experiences. There were 2 more to come. And in the middle of it, when I was expecting to be taken into diamond luminosity, something completely different opened up. I dissolved into the collective mind. I dissolved into the human family. And then I experienced, as the human family, what I came to understand was the death and rebirth of humanity. Not a lot of the detail given, but it was the experience of my human family experiencing a radical unraveling, a radical destructuring, a radical loss of all frames of reference, a loss of control, a dissolving of structures, taking us in. It was like a hurricane blowing over a Pacific island where you're just reduced to grabbing onto something and holding on and hoping you survive. It was that profound. The anguish was excruciating. I mean, the fear that I felt was extraordinary. And then, just when it was at its worst, just when it looked like all was lost, the storm passed.
Mm-hmm.
We began to pick ourselves up, and we found that humanity had been profoundly changed by this crisis. Something happened, it touched something, it opened something in our heart. We found that we had abilities that we did not have before. The way I had begun to think about this is that it really opened up the heart, and it opened us up to the profound experience of oneness. And with the experience of oneness, it kind of, you might think of as the heart chakra, it also opened up higher cognitive functions, higher chakra functions. As we began to organize and reorganize after this crisis period, there was a synergistic creativity. There was just a hyper creativity manifesting itself. And the session took me deeply over and over and over again. It said, this is going to happen faster than anyone is imagining. It's faster than anyone can imagine. Mm-hmm. And it showed me some of the systems, some of the workings of nonlinear systems, that the human collective psyche is a system. Mm-hmm. And the trauma of this event is going to be so excruciating for the individuals that it's going to stimulate not just the individual psyche, it's going to hyperstimulate the collective psyche. It's going to move the collective psyche into what a chaos theoretician would call a nonlinear state. And in the condition of a far from equilibrium or non-equilibrium condition, nature has the capacity to evoke great creativity very fast and to make changes very fast. It was a brutal experience. It ended well, but it was excruciatingly difficult. Yeah. Because, as I say in the book, after it was over, it took me about a year just to recover from the experience, to experience my entire human family going through an ordeal like this. And I don't know whether it's going to be exactly like this. All I can do is report what I experienced. Mm-hmm. And I felt like I was walking around my town in Ohio, and it was like walking around Hiroshima the week before the bomb went off. That everyone around me, I had such profound respect for the souls who are here, who are choosing to live on this planet and choosing to undergo and to support this process of transformation, which would have ramifications far into history. Mm-hmm. I think this is not only a change of our political structure, our civilizational structure, economic structure, it's a change which reaches so deeply, it'll change the fundamental substructure of the collective psyche, a change in the plate tectonics of the collective psyche, mm-hmm. so that children who are born after we make this transition, and I don't think it's like a quick transition, it's a multi-generational transition, they will be born, they will live in a different form of humanity, a different collective psyche. They will have natural aptitudes beyond what are natural aptitudes today. It didn't give me a lot of detail about what are the triggering causes. I experienced a global crisis. It seemed that it might be related to a cascading series of crises that were environmentally related. Mm-hmm. I didn't see much of the detail. I just experienced the depth of trauma and the magnificence of the creature that came out of that. Mm-hmm. And in later subsequent sessions, I had several opportunities. I was taken deep into, again, what I call deep time, and was taken into the future and experiencing this new archetype of the future human, given some sense of what it was about. Mm-hmm. And when I've experienced this being, this it's just the most magnificent thing. Yeah. The being is just the most extraordinary. We're looking at humanity healed, humanity empowered. It truly is like a species of We're of Christ, a species of Buddhas, a species of the prophets, all Buddhas. It's just an extraordinary transformation of the human condition. Now, I hope we don't have to go through something as severe as that. I hope if we're smart enough, if we're wise enough, if we start making heroic choices sooner, we can soften that. But my experience was that we're really going into a very difficult time. But this time is seminally important. It's really critical. And while it's a time of great challenge, it's also a time of great grace, because we're offloading the sins of our fathers exponentially. And the time is a time of exponential acceleration of development, individually and collectively.
It's a beautiful vision on the other side, and one of the, I mean, it was one of the most moving parts, maybe the most moving part, was when you got to actually experience what it was like to be the future human.
Yeah.
You know, and how it changed your sight for a moment too, with you were experiencing how the future human would actually see. And, you know, you called that diamond vision in the book.
Yeah, it's not just a change in the human heart, though it is. And it's not just a change of the human mind, but it's a change of our entire sensory equipment. We're kind of conditioned to believe that our senses are a function of mechanics, you know, just biological, electrical mechanics. But my experience is that that's not true. Our mechanical system is animated by consciousness. And when we are handling much more consciousness than we have been in the past, I experienced, as you mentioned, that the diamond vision. It was the very end of the last session of the 20-year journey. I experienced a hyper intensification of my visual field. It was not a hallucination. It was just a hyper acuity sitting with a 1,000 times more precision than I had ever experienced before in my life. And it lasted 10 minutes. And at the end of that 10 minutes, I went back to my ordinary, normal vision. I began to realize that I was seeing through the eyes of the future human, that all of our sensory life is being transformed. Our heart, our mind, our energetic body, but our senses are being transformed. It's an open-ended potential for development.
Yeah. Yeah, and you described that so well in the book. I mean, that was a part of the book where I just knew it was the truth, and it just absolutely lit up my whole
Spoke
body.
to you because you know from your own work.
Yes.
You know. Yeah.
I do. I haven't experienced what it feels like to be the future human. But, you know, as I've covered on the podcast, you know, I covered the book, The Order of Time. And, you know, time is an illusion when it comes to source as it is, right? Time works very differently in source. But it's just wrong, so true. And, you know, one of the things that we do know about just the physical reality we're in is that our senses are very dull compared to many animals. You know, we actually see very little of the reality that's even in this room. You know, we're not seeing infrared, we're not seeing electromagnetic fields, but we know it's here.
Yeah.
And you know, we know that when birds are flying away from, you know, a typhoon really quickly, they're seeing the electromagnetic fields. It's a really cool experience that you had, because, you know, humanity is built for evolutionary speed without a doubt. I mean, Homo sapiens have been here for 300,000 years and have changed way more than any other animal that I can think of in terms of our form 300,000 years ago to our form today. Just to put a fine point on this, you know, I asked you last night over dinner, you know, just being a tech optimist and a longtime tech entrepreneur, if you see it as a kind of mechanical upgrade, you know, just like I'm wearing contact lenses, -6.5 in this eye and -6 in this eye, the future of contact lenses where you can just you can
Yeah.
zoom in, you can see
Yeah.
much more detail. But you actually said, no, I actually saw it as a biological upgrade, that
Yeah.
just our biology changes
Yeah. Our
and evolves.
entire fundamental form
Yeah.
is evolving in time.
Yeah.
And now I understand some of this in the context of reincarnation. So my first book was on reincarnation. My position is that I think we just have an abundance of empirical data now that we didn't have 50 years ago. We have it now. It's a fact of nature.
Yeah.
We don't understand how it works. We don't know how learning is lifted out of our dying body and how it encodes into another body. We don't know the physics of reincarnation, but we know enough about the phenomenology of the continuity of consciousness that we have reasons to infer that it's just true. And so my understanding of that reincarnation is simply the higher octave of evolution. So evolution evolves species, but at some point it evolves, nature has figured out a way to evolve individuals within certain species. And so then we have nature is always rolling its learning forward, and it rolls its learning forward in groups, and then it rolls its learning forward with individuals. So to me, reincarnation, the more I've thought about it, the more I kind of see that reincarnation is about learning. It's just about learning. The classic understanding of reincarnation in the Eastern traditions, or even in the Western mystical traditions, is you grow, you learn, you grow, you learn, you become wiser, kinder. Eventually you achieve a state called samadhi, or realization, spiritual awakening. And then when you achieve that state, then you can leave the system. You leave samsara, you leave continuity of cyclic existence, and you have the privilege of resting in some off-planet paradise, whether the Buddha world or heaven or the garden. But what emerged in my sessions was something different, and that is achieving realization, recognizing that your being is divine at core. It's grounded in a universal consciousness that is the consciousness of life itself and the creative consciousness of the universe, that all of life is centered in a manifestation of that reality. That's a very important breakthrough. But that's only half of the circle.
Right.
The other half of the circle is the incarnation of that awareness and living it inside human existence, literally making heaven on earth. And I think we've been incarnating, we've been evolving and gestating the future human for hundreds of thousands of years. But now we've reached a point where the gestation is completing its cycle, and now we're entering into the time of labor. The time of labor is a dangerous time. It's a very painful time, but it's time for this child to be born. And in another session, in a session that I call the Diamond Soul, the birth of the Diamond Soul, I experienced all my former lives coming into me, just coming in very quickly. And then they seemed to hit critical mass. They merged, and they hit critical mass, and they fused. And when they fused, there was an explosion of diamond light out of my heart. And I was catapulted into a state of exquisite transpersonal ecstasy. I was an individual, but I was an individual beyond any frame of reference I had never known before. And I think what I was being shown in the teaching that unfolded, that I was being shown this is where humanity is being taken. This is where reincarnation is taking us. Soon, eventually, usually, you die, you return to the soul, you incarnate, you get individual. You return to the soul, individual. And we just keep this up for thousands and thousands and thousands of years.
Right.
But the eventual direction is our soul, which is the consciousness that holds all of our lives' experiences. Eventually, the soul emerges inside human existence, so that the soul wakes up inside the body, and we know ourselves not to be a 100-year-old being, but to be a 100,000-year-old being. And when that awakens, of course, we've had relationships with thousands and thousands of people, and we've been many thousands of people. We've been black, white, we've been poor, rich, we've been everything in history. And when the soul awakens in us, it opens up this breath of compassion and a breath of understanding. And it is truly the birth of oneness within the human species. And so for me, as I've come to understand it, the future human is not a sci-fi imagination. We don't have to go into, stretch of the imagination to understand what it is. We just have to look at our history with understanding.
Yep.
Our history, we've been building this organism, and there is a summation point coming, so that in order to make this transition, in order to survive our creative potential, which is emerging at this time in history, we need to grow up.
Mm-hmm.
And to grow up, it means sort of claiming our entire being, our soul being, and to just let that soul come forward and to shape our choices. And we can see signs of the soul beginning to emerge all over the place once you know what you're looking for, once you're looking to see it.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that you and I both share a love for Michael Newton's books. Journey of Souls is amazing.
Yeah.
And I completely also believe in reincarnation. I know it's true. I've seen in journeys for friends where they've experienced other lives very deeply. I know you've experienced that too as a new friend of mine. Thank you. And the one critique, although there's just overwhelming evidence for it, is, well, why do we have this amnesia? Why do we need to relearn?
Yeah.
And one thing that I've always said is, and I'm just curious how you think about this, is that if you've been a longtime professor, if you just took students aside and said, hey, I know you're really passionate about taking this course, I'm just going to give you all the answers. Don't worry about it. You'll make an A. They would feel cheated. They'd be like, wait, hold on. So part of the amnesia is like to rediscover how to be a good human being, to rediscover how to love, to find what your meaning is in this lifetime.
Yeah.
When you find it again, it gives you boundless energy. That's how I look at the book, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. It's, he found it, and then he was able to go through 4 concentration camps and come out the other side of that and invent an entire field of psychology called logotherapy.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing about the vision you got there is that of what that diamond soul is going to be like, that we're, the diamond makers, like pushing our soul being embodied in our physicality for the future human, where we get access to all that knowledge. It's a very interesting intersection with where we're at with the exponential curves that we're in.
Yeah.
And it's one of those moments, whether it's Voltaire or Uncle Ben from Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah.
And it is that time where, I know you read my science fiction novella, The Lattice, which I gave you last night, and thank you for already reading it.
Yeah. Fun. It's great and beautiful.
Well, thank you so much. That means so much coming from you. I actually discuss it on episode 27 of the podcast and kind of decode sections of it and give some shout outs to different people in it. The Lattice was really meant to be a positive vision for how humanity would awaken. Yeah. So we don't have to go through this trauma.
I hope that's true.
Yeah, and
all my heart, I hope it's true.
Yeah, and I do too, and I really think that our whole future reality and future, I think it's all probabilities.
Yeah,
like it's very quantum physics, right?
Yeah,
and if you study quantum physics, people like Robert Lanza and biocentrism, reincarnation syncs completely with that too, because the energy doesn't leave as you die. We're all just light and energy at our core. We actually know that through quantum physics. We know that we're in a field through Higgs boson, all the work they've done at CERN, and we're finding out more and more about why quantum entanglement is real, and what is this connective fabric of the universe, of which we only understand 4%. We call that matter. We don't know what 96% is.
I think consciousness is a field.
I do too.
And the soul is a field.
Yeah.
And I think when we take field theory and apply it to the soul, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But let me address that discontinuity. Why do we forget?
Yeah.
You know, and so here's a thought
Yeah.
experiment.
Yeah.
I tell my students, if you were God,
Yeah.
which many of them think they are, so it's an easy. If you were God and you were designing a system, you wanted to maximize growth, and you could take an organism and give it 100,000 years of life,
Mm-hmm.
and then at the end of that period, you would examine it and see how much have you learned. That's class A. Example B is you take the same 100,000 years, but you break it up into 100-year segments.
Mm-hmm.
And in each of those 100 years, you change their position in life, male, female, rich, poor, you change it all at different things.
Right.
At the end of that same 100,000 years, which one do you think would have learned more?
Mm-hmm.
And the class always chooses the second.
Right.
And so the discontinuity is part of the conditions which makes accelerated learning possible. Mm-hmm. So by forgetting and doing something different, and then coming back and assimilating it, and then doing something different, it's the differences and the forgetting that makes possible the differences.
Totally agree.
Which then makes accelerated development. But that doesn't mean that the forgetting is an abiding and eternal condition. I think there is a time of remembering when we die, but I think in history there is a time of remembering. There is a time of consolidating. Mm-hmm. So I think that there've been a number of movies that have played with the idea, what if we were to remember our previous lives? Mm-hmm. Wouldn't that be chaotic? And, wouldn't that just be confusing? And sure, we play with that. But that doesn't mean that nature's design doesn't involve remembering at some point in our evolutionary story. So the Buddha, the story of his awakening, is he went through the 4 watches of the night. And in the first watch of the night, he saw all of his former lives. Mm-hmm. Second watch, he saw the karma, the cause and effect that strung them together in a meaningful sequence. In the third watch of the night, he saw the undoing of that karma, the releasing of the karma. And in the fourth night of the watch of the night, he awakened into full consciousness. Mm-hmm. So I think the remembering of our former lives is part of the natural process of awakening our full spiritual potential. Mm-hmm. It's just owning what we are.
Yeah. Yeah. I just think I think that's beautifully said, and I think it's interesting that it's happening at a time where we're in this exponential of exponentials, because once you're technology has always been an exponential, but now we're in that upward part of the slope, and it's just going to continue to go straight up, and that's what that's what the lattice is all about. And I cover the years 2030 through 2085, and it's a vision of like what happens when humanity unites, and then all the things that we go through. And one of the big reveals in the book is that this has happened throughout time and space, where a species has gotten to a point of development where it had to choose collectively, the collective psyche had to choose love over fear.
Yeah.
And, we have, the diamond maker part of your book is so beautifully said. And, we've gone through, Homo sapiens are derivative of hominids who have been around for 4 million years. And so, we've been around for around 300,000 years, and we've gone through a real hardening process already. I mean, for 0.1% of our evolutionary time, we've had electricity.
Yeah.
For 99.9% of the time, we haven't. Can you imagine, your life without electricity today? I experienced that, we were talking about that last night. I experienced that for 8 days in the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
It was marvelous what happened in the Grand Canyon, and the bonds I made with friends there, like Michael Collins, who's been on this podcast, amazing documentary filmmaker on intuition. That's a great episode. But I knew I was coming back to electricity.
Yeah.
I didn't, it wasn't like it was gone forever. It was gone for 8 days.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful vision, because we're going to have technology that's so powerful that the vision I received in my journey that led to Love Conquers Fear is that God, A, wants us to make it
Mm-hmm.
to this evolutionary leap. And B, once we do, then we get to propagate the universe with the wisdom of love conquering fear.
Yeah.
And the whole universe then blossoms,
Yeah.
you know, and that we're one of the species that God has chosen to go on that journey if we choose. But it's really a very fateful choice, because, you know, we already have like existential risks today. You know, you and I talked about nuclear weapons last night, and
Yeah.
and I ask you, how many of today's arsenal would it take to essentially destroy almost all of humanity?
Yeah. And you
send us
stunned
into
me
a
by
nuclear.
telling me it was 2%.
It's 2%.
Yeah.
We have 50 times the amount.
Yeah.
And so this hijacking of the amygdala to keep us in a fear state and keep us separated, humanity has no choice but to transcend that.
Yeah.
It has to transcend that. There's no other way. That is one thing I am 100% certain of through my visions around technology, that we're going to be, I mean, we're going to have artificial general intelligence in the next few years.
Yeah.
That's going to lead to artificial superintelligence. That's going to lead to intelligence that'll appear godlike to us today.
Yeah.
And that's all going to happen in the next 10 to 15 years.
Yeah.
And so that is the diamond maker moment. Like, you and I are living it right now. It's in this lifetime.
The nub for me is, if this intelligence is enacted by an awakened heart, we're all safe and we all grow.
Yes.
If that intelligence is enacted with a shrunken heart or a self-centered heart, then we die.
Yeah.
We go into extinction. So one of the ways I translate courage versus fear, love versus fear, is small, large. Fear keeps us small, or our smallness gives us reasons to fear.
Yeah.
To allow ourselves to become large is to allow us to enter into oneness and to allow us to enter into love. And once the heart opens into oneness, then the world is safe from our intelligence. If we don't open up into that, then the world is threatened by our intelligence, and we bring destruction into the world.
Yeah. It seems to me that the acceleration that we're in of AI, quantum computing, robotics, brain-computer interfaces, this chase to think that we can create consciousness in machines, you know, is going to lead to more of a discovery of what our actual reality is. And so, for example, take reincarnation.
Yeah.
Or take that you and I would both agree, given the journeys we've had, and probably anybody listening to this who's had really transcendent journeys with psychedelics, or had a near-death experience, or had just a spontaneous awakening. I mean, there's lots of different ways to get that knowledge. If that's the real reality, then for sure that's going to be discovered, because it's not just limited to the world of form, all the amazing discoveries we're going to make. I mean, quantum physics is already leading to this knowledge of, oh my gosh, the ancient mystics thousands of years ago how did they know that everything is connected? And now we're seeing everything is connected. But there's no way they could have known that scientifically. The science didn't even exist. Even the way to even talk about it in a scientific way didn't even exist.
Wasn't there.
In the collective psyche, right? But they saw it.
And they saw it through the disciplined use of consciousness, through meditation processes, through the deep, deep introspection, which most of the world doesn't have the time or the inclination to do. And that's one of the reasons I think psychedelics have they're an evolutionary accelerator, because now even people who don't want to give their entire life over to meditation processes, and there is a great value to doing that, and psychedelics don't negate in any way that value, but as a supplement, it can give ordinary laypersons a temporary glimpse into some of the underlying structure of the world. And therefore, it can sort of help us accelerate an opening to those deep truths which the religious traditions, spiritual traditions have been speaking about for millennia. But now I can have a taste of it so that it rings true to me, and I understand how I can participate in that process.
Yeah. And once you glimpse that, it is transformational. And one of the things that's super fascinating, and I do not believe is any mistake, I very much believe in the book, The Celestine Prophecy, that things happen for a reason and show up at moments in time for a reason. And the divine is both very playful, sometimes hard on us. I mean, there's all different ways that the divine shows up for us. I see synchronicities sometimes multiple times a day.
Yeah.
Sometimes it really hits me over the head. Sometimes it's just a funny little nudge. We're in that shift where there's a consciousness awakening going on at the same time. So you've got the telepathy tapes, which has been wildly popular.
Yeah.
At one point was more popular than the Joe Rogan show.
Yeah.
I encourage you to listen to season 2, which just wrapped up.
Right.
It's amazing.
I'll do season 2.
And I'm going to show you that segment from Intuition before you leave with Michael Collins, because that's going to be amazing. We're supporting that documentary.
Yeah.
And
good.
So proud to be. And so how do you think about that, like the consciousness awakening? Given that this has been such a huge part of your life's work.
Yeah.
And what do you see happening now that kind of validates or invalidates what I just said in terms of how you see the consciousness awakening occurring?
Well, you're right. There are so many factors that are coming to a head now. If you're paying attention, if you choose to pay attention, there's so much going on. A lot of people aren't paying attention. They walk around in mall consciousness or their Super Bowl consciousness, and they're just not paying attention. But if you're paying attention, the work that's being done in hard sciences and physics and cognitive sciences and psychedelics and near-death episode research, which is a tremendous accelerator of our understanding, and reincarnation research, so much interesting
consciousness
stuff.
Research, yeah.
Consciousness research. The heat's being turned up underneath us. We're going from a slow, low boil simmer where we're moving up to a high boil. Now, there are counter processes too. There's tremendous greed that runs through our culture. There's tremendous fear that runs through our culture, paranoia. There's a tremendous kind of scarcity consciousness where we're not sure that we're going to get enough. Tremendous inequalities that are being almost hardened into our culture right now. So it's a tremendous kind of confrontation of very destructive, restrictive processes and very liberating processes, and I think our future is going to be determined by which of those processes we listen to more. Which are we going to pay most attention to? Which will we invest in? Which will we give ourselves over to? Because right now, really, if we had to take a look, if you really look at all of the processes in the world, you could make a very powerful case that the destructive processes that keep us small and in fear are overwhelming the love processes, the bigger processes. But personally, I'm with you. I think that, as Jung said, nature supports growth. And this is our growth. We're coming into a time when extinction is a tremendous motivator. And I think we're coming into a near extinction time. We'll have tremendous motivation to become larger, more than we are now. And I think for ourselves, but even more, I think we'll do it for our children and our children's children. And if you really love your children, then you're going to love all the children in the world. You just have to love. You can't not love the children.
Yeah.
We just have to make this transition. We have to make the world safe for everyone.
Yeah.
We have to rebalance and redistribute and take us forward. And in that process, I think we will experience the fruition of our own destiny welling up inside of us. And as we feel that fruition over time, it will just become, we really truly will experiencing an awakening of our heart, an awakening of our mind, an awakening of true peace, a heaven on earth. And it's not going to stop with our death. It's going to continue, and it's going to continue. And I think this really is a pivot point in history. I think psychedelics have a significant role to play in this pivot point. In my discipline, which is philosophy, most of the work is being done by psychologists and clinical people. But I think it has an enormous impact on philosophical thought, cosmological thought. I've often thought I wish that I had degrees in physics and astrophysics, because if I had had that training, the universe could have taught me so much more than it could teach me with the background that I had. And I really look forward when we begin to have research protocols where we take our best scientists and we take our best artists, our best, and we put them through the initiatory processes that psychedelics make possible. And of course, what we're already seeing, it enhances creativity. It enhances our ability to solve problems. We have breakthroughs in these states. We can concretize those insights into practical outcomes. And all of this, I think, contributes to the opportunity for the next generation to live better than the past generation.
Yeah.
That's the challenge before us.
Yeah. And it is a big challenge. I don't want to make light of it. I mean, I know that one of the reasons when I reached out to you that you said yes to be on Love Conquers Fear, when I spoke to you, is you said to me, you know, if we lose corporate America in this, you know, then we're not going to make it.
Yeah.
But we win corporate America, we will. And the best episode of Love Conquers Fear to really dive into that was episode 3 with Jason Karp, who'll be here tonight for the dinner. I'm very glad you get to meet him. I'm glad you're also a big Hugh chocolate fan. We were too before we knew him and his wife. You know, Jason talks about like corporations have to graduate from putting profit over people. I mean, we are wired the way we are because of the amount of evolutionary time that we've dealt with scarcity that you and I cannot imagine. And there's still countries, to be clear, that are dealing with this level of scarcity. I cover Chad quite a bit on this podcast, which has a GDP of $660 a person versus our $85,800 a person.
Yeah.
And I start out actually Love Conquers Fear, the book with covering Chad and the hope for Chad. We do live in a place right now, at least in the world of form, where corporations are trying to keep us hyper addicted to social media content that is harmful to our psyche, our individual psyche, and collective. You know, media constantly pushing us the worst dystopian. You know, the stuff that just keeps us in this heightened fear,
shrunk, small, competitive, aggressive.
Yes, and then the toxins in our food and the pharmaceutical complex. And look, there's lots of people in food doing amazing work. Lots of people in pharmaceuticals doing amazing work. It's not like, and lots of people in corporations, you know, that are doing amazing work. And as you know, I've been part of the conscious capitalism movement, which, you know, John Mackey was the co-founder of. And, you know, that heart shift in corporate America, the way I see it playing out as an entrepreneur is that the next generation really is demanding it.
Yeah.
They're really demanding it. If you look at the youngest generation, their social media use is going down, their alcohol use is plummeting, and they really are like Neo in the Matrix. They're just like going to stop the bullets. They're like, okay, you know, this is not the world that I want.
Yeah.
And I know that you share a love for this youngest generation. Yeah. And that you said on the leading edge call that we had that God sends in the brightest troops.
Yeah. When the going gets tough, God sends in the A-team. Yeah. You know, and they are extraordinary. I mean, I've watched them as college students. They're so extraordinary. They have such capacity, such natural understanding of things that I had to struggle years to understand. And the talent is extraordinary. And the spiritual depth is extraordinary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like with our own kids, with Rachel and Yuzu, that we're raising little Buddhas, like I'm kind of, sometimes I just feel totally outmatched, I'm just trying to keep up with them and be as good as they are,
Yeah.
because their level of wisdom is so beautiful. I made the mistake with Rachel at one point, calling her the wrong generation, calling her millennial. She's like, Dad, I'm not a millennial. Like, she's like, look at the difference. And I looked at the difference. I actually used AI to analyze the difference between her generation. And I was like, wow, you're better. Actually, your generation really is better. Like, it's actually codifiably better, in terms of the wiring.
Yeah.
And Yuzu's generation probably be even better than that. So I think the way I see it playing out, at least, is we're going to hit a precipice point in our evolutionary history and in our technological progress, where we're going to be able to see abundance on the horizon. We're going to be able to see it, and it's going to force a choice. And I think you're going to see it happen both tops down, leaders have a heart shift, and bottoms up, to be like, we just can't play the scarcity, zero-sum, fear-based game, or we will destroy ourselves. And you think about the Cuban Missile Crisis, which was a very scary event. But one brave person made the fateful choice, and I had Pippa Malmgren on the podcast, and she described that really well. You'll be able to, you haven't seen that episode yet, but it'll go live really soon. And her dad was in the room during that moment.
Really?
He was in the room. He worked for 4 presidents in his career, and it ended in hugs.
Yeah,
it ended in hugs, and I think that the technology is going to progress so quickly, so astonishingly amazing in terms of its capability, that it's going to force us to make that choice.
And as you mentioned in that example, it's crisis that drove the conditions
That is true.
that ended in hugs. And so there's a sense in which we are coming to a telling time in history. We are inheriting a crisis in nature that is of our own making. Hundreds of years in the making, and circumstantially, and it's like nobody's fault, but now it maybe becomes our fault. But there's a crisis brewing, and I think crisis has a role in taking us where we're going. The sooner we respond to that crisis and address it, I think the fewer of our children have to die for us to make this transition.
Yeah, let's go back and dive into the book.
Okay.
Because there's so much we haven't covered, and it's impossible to cover the entire book. I mean, it really is a must read for people, in my very strong opinion. Whether or not they have interest in psychedelics, just what I told you when I picked you up from the airport, I said you wouldn't be mad at me, is that you're willing to die to really get to this level of knowledge about what a reality was. And you said, well, actually, I experienced many ego deaths, which is psychological death is actually harder than
physical death.
Right. Yeah. And that really sat with me a lot as I went to sleep.
Because when you die physically, there's inside, that your consciousness is going to survive.
Yeah.
But when you die consciously, when you die psychologically, it is a radical death.
Yeah.
And then you are reborn into a different state of consciousness, a different set of capacities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the subtitle of your book, Diamonds from Heaven.
Yeah.
We've touched a little bit on the diamond soul, et cetera, but we haven't really delved into diamond luminosity.
Yeah.
Which is really beautiful and has so many synchronicities with quantum physics and the world of light that we come from. But won't we dive into that a bit?
That really addresses what it was emerging in the last 5 years of my 20-year journey, because there was levels at the personal mind, levels at the collective mind, levels at the archetypal layer of mind, and then levels at causal mind or causal oneness. So by the time I had reached that level, and there was 1 year of extraordinary blessings in causal reality, and experiences of oneness, of shunyata, what Buddhists call shunyata, emptiness of self, experiences of cosmic love, the experience of the diamond soul. And I was like totally philosophically satiated. I thought, I had been asked to give something in the ocean of suffering work, and I gave it, and I was more than rewarded for that.
You already felt like you had gotten so many blessings at that
I was
point.
filled with blessings. But there were still 5 years to go, and I was taken into yet another cycle of death and rebirth, and it's not a repetition of ego death, but a different kind of death. And then suddenly, when I came out of that death, I entered into a state of extraordinary hyper-clarity, hyper-reality, clear beyond imagination, just extraordinary clear. I mean, my mind fell open into a dimension of cosmic mind that was beyond anything I'd ever experienced before. And I'd experienced light many times. When you go through ego death, you often experience light in different stages as light. But it was as if all those earlier experiences of light were simply preparing me for this. And it was just overwhelmingly beautiful. I won't say it's ecstatic, because it was ecstatic, but the most wonderful thing was the clarity, just clear, just I began to understand what the Buddhists mean when they say, when you experience this, it undoes thousands of years of living in the shadows of karma. It's outside of karma, outside of cause and effect. It's a different reality. And over the next 5 years and 26 sessions, which was 1/3 of my entire journey, I only experienced diamond luminosity 4 times. When you touch a level of hyper pure consciousness or hyper clear, it triggers all sorts of detoxification in your psychophysical spiritual system. So the first time I touched diamond luminosity, the next session, the opening line of the next session was, "Today was spent entirely in the mud." It just triggers all sorts of detoxification. You have to process this before you can get back into that diamond luminosity state. So it opened up about once a year for 4 years. The first 2 episodes took me deeper and deeper into the diamond luminosity. And then the last 2 episodes brought the diamond luminosity deeper and deeper into my being. It was like the diamond light was crunching itself into my physical form, into my emotional and physical makeup. And that's why the very, very last session at the very end, that gift of diamond vision, was, I think, this diamond luminosity getting so deeply it was affecting my physical senses. But something happened in the middle of that sequence. In the 50th session, when I was in this, as deep as I ever went into the diamond luminosity, so had paid the price of getting there, and I was resting in a state of exquisite, ecstatic clarity. And then my physical field, my visual field turned 90 degrees, and something opened, and I saw far into the distance another reality, far away. And I saw something that looked like galaxies, but that's the best my mind could do to put form to something that was a light domain. And a beam of light hit me from that reality, and it completely shattered me. And I was in the diamond state at that time, but this light completely shattered me, and it only lasted a couple of seconds. And as I was putting my mind back together and coming into the diamond state, I began to realize that in 1 second, it completely changed my understanding of what the journey is about and how reality is built. because, like many other misunderstandings that I had taken into this work, I thought the goal was to get to some destination. It's sometimes described as becoming one with God, or entering the metacosmic void, or there's some ultimate state, or going home. And I had experienced oneness with God in many different forms, and I experienced different manifestations of the void, and I had experienced coming home repeatedly, but I always had this sense that there is an endpoint to this journey, that if I reach this endpoint, all will be well. And in this, I was in the condition of supreme all is well, but I learned that it's an infinite journey. It's an infinite progression. Even using this powerful methodology, I would never, ever get to the end of the mystery of, you might call it of the divine. I call it the mind of the universe, the being of the universe, the creative intelligence of life. That's one of the reasons I would, if I were doing this journey over again, I would do it very differently, because I've learned the goal is not to get to some end state. The goal is to open up and let in as much healing as you can, let in as much insight as you can, hold on, grab as much of it as you can, adjust your life, live your life in accordance with it. But it's just changing your membrane, the balance of how you live in the context of infinite intelligence and infinite love, becoming more available to it, more transparent to it. And of course, this is what spiritual practice is. It's simply becoming more transparent to the reality that is.
Yeah.
So I've learned it's not an endpoint agenda. It's a transparency agenda.
Yeah, that part of the book blasted me too when I saw it, because it influenced, the lattice, like, God's infinite game is the last part of the lattice, and I don't think that we'll ever fully understand the nature of God or the mind of the universe. Like, I think it's so far beyond our comprehension.
Yeah.
Whatever was the force that made the Big Bang.
Yeah.
A state of no entropy that, boom, every materialist has to deal with that miracle.
Yeah.
It just, I don't think it's possible for us to fully understand the nature of God. I don't think we ever will. And that was like the natural kind of conclusion point for, when you reach that state where it's like, you'd put your body through a lot, put your mind through a lot, had done a lot of collective healing of the human psyche, really come back to tell the tale to humanity, which we all, again, owe you a great debt of gratitude for that. It's just like the people that open up the Drake Passage, or the first people to go to the moon. I mean, took great risk to advance our species. And that was it, right? That was the point where you're like, there is no end to this.
If we take the very, very best of our species right now, our most brilliant scientists and our most highly developed spiritual beings, and then we imagine 100,000 years from now, which is a blink in divine
evolutionary time.
It's nothing.
Yep.
100,000 years from now, imagine what we're going to be capable of.
Oh yeah.
Not just in our concepts, but in what we will have actualized. And so if we just think back 100,000 years or 300,000 years in the past, imagine Homo hominid dying and confronting this infinite intelligence, and how hard it would be for this being to take in the magnitude of this infinite intelligence. And now we're 300,000 years later, and we think because we have all these fancy theories and we know so much more than we did then, we can take in the magnitude of what this thing is and what it's doing.
No.
Just take ourselves forward a few 100,000 years and try to imagine what is going to be, what this intelligence is going to be evoking in us in the emergence of continuing evolution forward. I mean, it's an ongoing drama, as you say in the book, God's play. I mean, it's, I hesitate to use the word God because as a professor of religious studies, I know how much damage has been done by our shrunken and heavily culturally enculturated limitations in our understanding of thinking about God. But you can use that term God as long as you strip it away. This intelligence that led to the Big Bang, the intelligence that gave birth to the galaxies and the solar systems and nature and life and consciousness and individuated consciousness and moving forward. I think you're right. We really don't have an idea of what's coming. I mean, we may be able to envision the next stage. We may be able to envision the crisis and the resolution of the crisis and the next stage. But that's just the next cycle of evolution. It's hard to imagine what lies 100,000 years past that cycle into in there. And that's when I think we ultimately always have to surrender to the majesty of existence, to the majesty of it all. I mean, I know that you're inspired by the wonderful photographs that come out of the Webb,
James Webb Telescope.
Telescope,
Oh my gosh.
and I do too. I mean, it lifts your spirits, it lifts your eye to a larger horizon. And psychedelics open us up and lift us to a larger horizon. We've seen the wisdom and the intelligence outside of us, but when we look to human existence, we have not felt the wisdom. We feel like there may be beauty and wisdom there, but this is a mean and ugly and dirty business and God doesn't care and this is hard. But I think now we're beginning to understand, with understanding reincarnation, understanding the larger trajectory of our individual and our collective development, now we begin to be able to understand maybe what are some of the seeds of suffering in human existence and what are the seeds of clarity and breakthrough in human existence. So I think in the end, when we expand our experience of what human existence is about, we can then experience the beauty of the universe and feel ourselves part of it, instead of feeling ourselves estranged from it because we're just a little bitty piece and things are so hard, we don't understand it. We can understand it. We're beginning to understand it. And with that understanding comes great peace, really great peace and excitement. It's exciting.
I mean, I can definitely tell you it breaks down really quickly for me, even as someone who has seen where technology is going to go. In episode 21, I had Jeremiah Owing on, who is one of the best AI investors in the world. And he works alongside Reid Hoffman. Reid Hoffman's the founder of LinkedIn and has been one of the best investors in the world, period, like probably one of the top 10 in tech. And he said on that episode that even Reid Hoffman, with all the access he has, can't see beyond 2 to 3 years with AI. So you're talking 100,000 years. In the lattice, I was like really trying to envision, the next, 60 years, essentially. 100,000 years from now, I mean, we would, if we could go in that time machine and you and I visit that, I don't think it'd be recognizable at all. At all. I don't think we'd even be able to recognize the being.
And even if we scaled it back to 10,000.
Right. 10,000 years.
Still be hard.
It would still be. Yeah. It one way to think about that is in reverse. If you and I could go back 100,000 years, what would they think of us right now? They'd be like, hold on, you have something called a grocery store and you have these things called blueberries and there's like 10 different types at that grocery store.
And jets.
And jets and just on and on and on. They wouldn't even be able to grapple with electricity. Clean water, flushing toilets, a hot shower. I mean, there's just so many things that
we're on the cusp of so many extraordinary things coming.
Yes.
And to me, the key, we have this exponential liberation of the mind taking place in so many disciplines. The heart seems to have opened more slowly than the mind. And I think what's happening here is that the heart has to open. The heart opens us to oneness. It opens us to compassion. It opens us to fellow feeling. The heart now is the constricting organ of evolution. And I think if we don't open the heart, if we don't open to oneness and compassion, to love, as you say, then our mind it continues to be a danger to humanity. But if we make this transition, then our mind becomes a bounty. And some people ask me, what about human nature? What about animals? What about you? You know, you don't ever talk about animals in your book. And I think that's true. I mean, and there are some people who work with psychedelics. They have very deep and profound experiences with animals, with kind of in a shamanic kind of world with animal intelligence. And I think the reason is because humanity represents the greatest threat to all life on this planet. If we can heal humanity, then all the animals will be safe.
For sure.
And if we don't heal humanity, then they continue to be endangered and to die.
Yeah. I would say that we also have the greatest potential to heal the planet.
Yes.
Like replenish the ozone.
Yeah.
You know, you remember in the lattice by 2050, the Earth becomes a healed jewel.
Yeah.
And we have that, and no animal has that potential.
Yeah.
One derivative pieces of work that I haven't sent you yet is called The Whale's Dream. And it's a branch from the lattice where Dr. Alexander Bliss, you know, gets very infatuated with working with whales because their consciousness, they're in a half awake, half asleep state. So while they're sleeping, they're actually half of their brain is awake, and we decode whale language, and that's already happening right now, but we decode it to a point where we can really converse with them. And we find out it's actually got a great tie-in with reincarnation that they already have the diamond soul.
Yeah.
That they're already there. They already know all of their prior lifetimes.
Yeah.
That their consciousness is more developed than our consciousness. They're receiving it differently.
And isn't that interesting?
That very much could be the case today. You know, that is what Love Conquers Fear is all about. I mean, the message of the podcast and the book is what humanity needs to get to. And one thing I'd love to do as we kind of wrap this up and we go into this beautiful dinner tonight with the Leading Edge group, which is going to be such an honor to be there with you and hear all of those very intelligent people ask you questions. Is at the end of your book, it's in chapter 12, coming off the mountain. You know, where you're talking about the difficulty of coming off the mountain of all these journeys. And there's a last section of that chapter called "Entering the Sweet Valley." There's this part where you're interacting with a woman. I can't remember which woman it was, but you're writing to her, and she's asking you to distill it.
It's a reporter.
Okay, it's a reporter.
Yeah.
And this is not going to do the book justice at all because there's so much deep texture in the book. Again, it's a must read.
Well, she asked me, what's the most important thing you learned?
Yes. And so I want to read that list because I think we've covered everything on this list, but I want to see if there's anything else we should maybe just double click on before we wrap up. Number 1, that the universe is the manifest body of a divine being of unimaginable intelligence, compassion, clarity, and power. Number 2, that we are all aspects of this being, never separated from it for a moment. Number 3, that we are growing ever more aware of this connection. Number 4, that physical reality emerges out of the light and returns to the light continuously. Number 5, that light is our essential nature and our destiny. Number 6, that all life moves as one. Number 7, that reincarnation is true. Number 8, that there is a deep logic and significance to the circumstances of our lives. Number 9, that everything we do contributes to the evolution of the whole. Number 10, that our awareness continues in an ocean of time and a sea of bliss when we die. Number 11, that we are loved beyond measure. And number 12, that humanity is driving towards an evolutionary breakthrough that will change us and life on this planet at the deepest level. It's really beautiful.
There's nothing in that list that our best spiritual traditions haven't already taught us.
I know.
What emerges in psychedelic, the cosmology that emerges is not a new cosmology.
Mm-hmm.
It's simply a different technology that allows us to have access to these insights, which have been accessed in other contemplative disciplines through history.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing new here.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a different methodology for accessing them. But it's powerful medicine at a time when we need powerful medicine right now. And so I hope that psychedelics will contribute to an awakening of the human heart and an opening of the human mind to this, and help us fulfill this destiny,
Mm-hmm.
which is building up inside of us, underneath us, taking us forward where we need to go.
Yeah. It certainly will be an increasingly powerful tool, because it's having a real renaissance right now, without a doubt.
Yeah.
But I would also posit that there's going to be a lot more, with brain-computer interfaces, there's going to be a lot more understanding about near-death experiences, about, anybody listening to this or watching this, I would not underestimate how technology will actually help us prove scientifically that this list is true.
That will be interesting, won't it?
Will be interesting, is inevitable that it happens. As I've said many times on this podcast, I'm 95% certain that we make it. I want to make that 100%.
Yeah.
And it's inevitable, because again, think about Max Planck and Albert Einstein and the patriarchs of quantum physics. They became more spiritual as a result of their discoveries, because they found that the ancient mystics are right.
Yeah.
And from the lattice that I end it by quoting from ancient scripture.
Yeah.
Quoting from the Quran, quoting from the Zohar, quoting from the Bible, quoting from ancient Hindu text.
Yeah.
And, it took us the scientific discovery to understand that everything that's in, Bhagavad Gita and the Tao Te Ching and ancient, text was true.
Yeah. Deep truths.
Deep truths. And that is, that's something I'm super excited about in this lifetime. It's not just about humanity making it, but I actually think the catalyst for humanity to make it is going to be that non-local consciousness is real, and that we come from this world of love and light.
Yeah. And
then once we know that, how do we behave having that knowledge? It will for sure transform us.
Yeah.
Because then we know that is our actual reality. So I'm looking forward to the continuing journey with you. I'm so glad that you've become a friend, and I'm just so deeply, deeply thankful and have immense gratitude for what you've done on behalf of humanity. I really think that your work is going to go down in time, 50, 100 years from now, maybe not even that long, as a key catalyst for why humanity made it. Well, I really think that's going to happen.
If it helps in any way, if it helps humanity make it, it would just be an honor and a privilege.
Yeah.
Because that's all I want. All we want is just help humanity make it through this transition, help us come to our senses, help us wake up.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Thank
really,
you,
really
Brett.
appreciate
really
you.
Wonderful, brother.
Thanks so much. Yeah. So thanks everybody for tuning in to another episode of Love Conquers Fear. Incredible lineup coming. I am fully booked for the next couple of months, and just stay tuned. There's going to be just so many amazing guests on. Thanks again for all the love you're giving me. You actually helped me come up with my 2026 theme for the year, to make this year all about embodiment. Last year was all about the inner journey. And I've just seen so many business leaders, entrepreneurs having a heart shift. I mean, I got a message today from someone that it's been absolutely transformational for her in her life. And that's all I'm trying to do here. This is my love letter to humanity. It's going to take us all, and it's team humanity all the way. We got to make it. We will. Thank you so much, and love you all.